And I know that we're going to be talking about some of the ACLU's historic involvement in free speech cases, and I know that's not
it's not my area, but I can talk a little bit about it. I hope.
Well, right, and I mean there are lawyers who brought those
right,
cases
for
particularly,
sure.
and we talked about this ahead of time. I'm not necessarily looking to get into the nitty gritty of this court's
right.
holding on that case
right.
and so on, but really to look at the picture historically and analytically today,
right?
Because there, as you and I talked about the other day when we're setting up our conversation today, there are going to be more Charlottesvilles,
no doubt,
in the weeks and months and years ahead.
Absolutely.
And the issues that the ACLU confronted, that community police forces confronted, that varying groups of widely disparate belief systems and interests confronted, that we all confront as citizens, whether we're talking about Skokie, Illinois, or Charlottesville or Berkeley,
right?
It's going to keep coming. So I want to look at it from that perspective, sure. and starting with what happened 40 years ago, because what we're talking about is the role and scope of free speech,
right.
and how that comes into conflict, just as human beings come into conflict,
right.
With other values that we have,
exactly.
nonviolence, not acting in a hateful manner,
equality,
sure. Respect. I mean,
Absolutely.
all these things, come, really swirling around in the throes of these confrontations of people and in the confrontations of these issues legally.
Right.
So, I look back at Skokie, and actually, I was born in San Francisco, but actually lived outside of Chicago for a period of time in the late 60s.
Okay.
So it was a little bit before Skokie, which was in the late 70s.
Right.
But I actually remember it somewhat. I have a vague awareness of it at that time.
Right.
And, and growing up Jewish, and having studied the Holocaust, as I did after college, and right before going to law school, it's really such a dramatic turning point in our whole understanding of what free speech means and its importance, and also for the ACLU itself as
right.
an organization.
True.
So give us a little background, from sort of 30,000 feet about that case and why that was so important.
Well, I think you're absolutely right that people come to these issues from diverging perspectives and viewpoints and life experiences that inform those viewpoints. And the country itself, right, I think is still evolving. Certainly 40 years ago, we were confronting issues, some of them for the first time, at least from a legal perspective, that needed resolution. And the question for Skokie was, should these Nazis be able to march in a heavily Jewish neighborhood?
A neighborhood of heavily
Holocaust
Jewish
survivors,
and with a lot of
absolutely.
Holocaust survivors
For
living
sure.
in there.
Right. And so it was really controversial. And the question was, does the First Amendment protect their right to march, given the sensitivities involved? And so the ACLU had to grapple with whether it should be involved in that case. And its decision to become involved was very controversial, and the organization lost a lot of supporters. I think in retrospect, it was the right thing to do.